I am Tom, and this is AC On, the short Alpha Clash podcast where I talk all things Alpha Clash on my way to work. So, recent tournament, shift of meta. Let's talk about that. So, in the weekend, there was a new Clash Ground tournament. I think it was a $10,000 reward scheme in Columbus, and that was the first Clash Ground with Unrivaled cards from the third set available, which would be interesting. So, to recap from previous Clash Grounds, we had a Clash Ground Las Vegas, and we had a Clash Ground Manila. And what was happening there was predominantly a talk thing. I think Las Vegas had 2 decks. There wasn't something like that. Anyway, the point is, talk was the dominant here, the dominant contender on those Clash Grounds. I did a podcast episode about that, where I reflected on how unhealthy it is for a card game not to have a diverse meta, but only have a single viable strategy for this. I was hoping at the time that they would somehow fix this, and not by either just increasing the power of everything, but or shifting completely to a single other meta. So, like shifting from printing so much to counter the current meta, which was singular red aggro, or red black, I think was the dominant colors, and just shift it to some other combination. What ended up happening was that Unrivaled, now out in most of the world, has provided support fairly broad to all, at least all kinds, all the colors, of course, but to different play styles, to a point where when we saw Columbus this weekend, and I saw just today a chat in Discord that sort of have the top 8 from a tournament in Manila, I think, or somewhere in the Philippines at least, where the top 8 had the same characteristic as the top 16 in Columbus. The top 16 in Columbus had, I think, 9 different contenders, and the top 8 from the the Philippine contest had 6. I want to see 6, maybe just 5 different contenders. That was one thing, but what's interesting about that is they were different colors. So I haven't seen the decks yet. I hope to see some of them. I'll touch on that a little bit later, and why, especially one I want to see some decks for. But what was interesting was that even though in Columbus a red contender, a red aggro contender did win, there were, up until the semi-finals, there were other contenders. The top, as I said, the top 16 had, I think, 9 different contenders, and top 8 had 3 different contenders. So there's still a somewhat bias, or somewhat a close call to the width of the meta. But there are only 8 places in the top 8, and talk was there, but there were also Warcry and the Machina who won, and in the top 16 in Columbus and the top 8 in the Philippines were Krung, the new black contender. So a lot of variety there. There was white Warcry, and Mean Streak didn't make it. Death didn't make it to top 8. Pestilence didn't make it to top 8 in Columbus. I think Pestilence did make it to top 8 so there was a lot of variety in the matchups. Talk was not completely out; he was still there, as I mentioned, but there were variety, and someone else won. For me to do that with a single set, to have a shift in that, I think there are 2 reasons for it, maybe 3. One is that the Unrivaled set came out with enough support for other play styles, for other contenders, to make them viable. One of them is Lord Krong, from the discarded, and one was Warcry, of all things. And that, I did not see that one coming. But also support for other characters so that they would move up in compatibility. The other thing is, this is still a young card game. We haven't the card game itself, the TCG itself, has not reached 2 years yet. So set 4 will come out this fall, and a draft set after that, and that will sort of mark the 2 complete cycles, 2 years of the TCG. That will be the turning point, whether this will survive or not. I think it will. I think it's growing, but we'll have to wait and see. But with set 3, enough support to provide more support for more strategies, and I think, just as I mentioned, this being a young game, having players fiddle around with a bit more card, with a bit more variety, is still a big thing. But generally, I see it as a positive thing that the meta is now open, so that any contender seems viable. Which of course isn't true, but for a casual player, I am not locked in to have to play a specific color, a specific play style. I can actually brew and still have a chance of winning. So, yay for that. And then I mentioned there was one thing more. One of the things that surprised me, 2 things that surprised me, both with the Columbus setup and with the results from Manila, was that in Columbus, Warcry was on the boards up until the top 4 to the semi-finals. I distinctly remember in my podcast of top 3 to mention that Warcry might be interesting to build with at a later point, but he would not be competitively viable. That's obviously not true. So I'm very curious to see what decks were in there. I saw someone mention that maybe it wasn't a Warcry deck per se. I'm very curious to see if that is right. So someone mentioned that even Warcry is white, a white contender. The cards in the deck were black-green, I think. If that's true for all the Warcry decks, that's a very interesting thing. It does open up sort of the idea about deck building, that even if you choose one color contender, let's say a black Weapon, for instance, you don't have to play black cards at all. You're very free there. And generally, playing deck building in Alpha Clash is fairly unrestricted. So, yay for that. There are mechanics that make sense and does make sense, but it's very open. And I just haven't had the idea not to include white cards in a white contender deck, for instance. So there might be some play there, but I do think most of them are Warcry decks. So I'm very curious to see how that turned out, and how I was wrong and how much I was wrong is obvious. The other thing that struck me was that I predicted that there would be a lot of red support, so that will not go away, and it didn't. But also that Magnate would have gained so much support in Unrivaled that he would get in there and sort of dominate the scene alongside the contenders like Torque. That didn't happen at all. As far as I remember, there wasn't a single Magnate contender in neither the top 16 from Columbus nor the top 8 from Manila. So obviously my analysis was wrong. I'm happy to see that, and I'm really happy to see the game meta, the viability of it open up. I think that's super important. Anyway, that was it for me today, driving home in the summer heat. If you like this, please share it and give me a like and a comment. Apparently that should help reach more people. Anyway, that's all for me now. Talk to you later. Bye.